A big thanks to Gymnastic Planet for supporting this episode. Gymnastics is a challenging sport, but having the right tools in your gym bag really does help. Gymnastic Planet is a leading manufacturer and distributor of essential training kit. They provide the best quality products, including world-class speed equipment, handguards, and chalk. They also specialise in club services like venue design, maintenance, and installation. Backed by decades of experience, from competing and coaching to club management, Gymnastic Planet aims to help gymnasts succeed and enjoy their craft. If you'd like to find out more, visit gymnasticplanet.com. In 2009, after winning 7 out of 7 gold medals at the English Championships, I made a big mistake and left my gym bag at the competition arena. The next morning, Sergey picked me up to take me to a national training camp with the GB squad. That was by far the biggest telling off that I received throughout the whole of my career. But luckily, I was able to pick my gym bag up on the way, but not before Sergey told me that the next time I should leave my head instead. They say that a bad workman blames his tools. In gymnastics, the wrong tools can be the difference between winning and losing, and this is my story. This episode of the Sam Oldham podcast is sponsored by Turn, the only brand dedicated solely to men's gymnastics. Towards the end of my career, I started to work closely with the team at Turn to design custom uniforms that expressed who I was and where I came from, and they were always able to bring my ideas to life. For years, I wore uncomfortable gymnastics clothing until I started to wear Turn, whose uniforms are built with their attention to detail and quality in mind. Go check them out now at turn-gymnastics.com and enjoy the episode. So I guess the first piece of equipment I probably got in gymnastics was probably, to be fair, a leotard. But I think the first big thing that you get is your handguards. And the first handguards that I ever used, they weren't mine. We used to have a box in the gym at Knott's that was just full of old handguards. So if someone got a new pair or they got a bit ripped or whatever, they would throw them in this box. It was like a lost and found box, but for gymnastics. And I can remember the big lads saying, go find some handguards and have a go on the chalk bar. Because when you were a kid, we weren't allowed to use the chalk bar for a certain amount of time. So you go on the shiny bar, which is just the same bar. It's made out of steel, but there's no chalk on it. And you use basically gardening gloves with these strange loop straps. You strap yourself in and then you just can't fall off. And that's where you learn the basic swings and the basic skills when it comes to doing the high bar. And then you move on to doing the chalk bar. And it's a big step because all of a sudden you're not strapped on. It's quite scary. That bar, when you're little and your hands are tiny and you're 6 or 7 years old, it's quite thick. It's hard for you to hold on to. The handguards, they go through your fingers. So usually, it's a piece of leather with a strap that goes around your wrist, and there's 3 holes for your 3 middle fingers. They fit in, and your glove and your thumb, and your little finger kind of wrap around the bar. So I can remember going over, being encouraged by the older lads to try a pair of handguards on and just trying to swing on the bar, and they felt dead weird. These handguards were like the seniors' old handguards. They were like this long, super dangerous because they could potentially wrap around the bar, but I didn't mind. Tried them on and had a little swing or whatever. And then that's probably the first step towards training on the chalk bar. And then all of a sudden I got asked by one of the coaches, right, you need to get a pair of handguards. You've got to talk to your mum and dad. My mum and dad would come in, probably my dad, and he'd talk to the coach, and the coach would say, look, you need to buy him a pair of handguards. He needs that for gymnastics. And that was probably where my first handguards started. And I think the first handguards that I used to wear, which was pretty much what everybody wore at that time, was Reich Sport handguards. They had a red strap, and you could get them in buckle as well. But when I started out, when I was a kid, I always just used to wear the red strap. It had one strap round it. They were dead good. They were really good back then as well. I think over time, a lot of the handguard companies have now, as soon as they get a bit bigger, they have to switch their manufacturing up and expand and produce more pairs of handguards, so they change the quality of the leather a little bit. And I remember back then, handguards used to last for a long time. You know, I'd get a pair of handguards and they last for a year maybe. Whereas towards the end of my career, I think when I started, there was a time when I was about 19, I would wear those Reich Sport ones on rings when I was maybe like late teenage years, and I was going through a pair every 4 or 6 weeks because they just changed the quality of the leather. It was probably due to the fact that it was a lot heavier as well, but the leather quality just wasn't as good. So at that point, I started to switch over. But going back to when I was a kid, I started with these Velcro strap ones, and I used those probably until the age of about 11 or 12. And I think at 11 or 12, it was like, I don't know why it was necessarily, but it was like that step up to trying to be cool like the older lads, and you switch to buckles. So rather than it being a Velcro strap, it'd be like a buckle, and you'd have 2 buckle straps. And they were great. They were a lot more solid, because what would happen with the Velcro a lot of the time is, obviously you're in a gym and there's chalk everywhere, so the Velcro would lose its stickiness, especially like if you've ever jumped into a foam pit with your socks on. It's like the worst thing in the world, because you just get little bits of foam all over your socks, and the same thing would happen to the Velcro. So they'd get little bits of foam all over this Velcro and then they wouldn't stick. And the worst situation you could ever be in when you're in the gym training and you're doing routines is getting to the end of your routine and the Velcro comes undone and you have to drop off, and then Sergey would say, sorry, you got to start again. That would be like the worst thing ever. So we'd put elastic bands around the Velcro or tape it up. But yeah, so I guess we probably in part switched to the buckle because it just got rid of that issue. And I trained with buckles for a few years, and then I remember being about 14 or 15, and essentially I went to compete at a four-way international match, which is where you compete GB, France, Germany and Switzerland. So I went to do one of these competitions. I was doing my routine. I had to do a squat dislo. So just a skill I used to hate. It's the only skill in gymnastics that I used to do with my eyes closed, because the pain on my shoulders, I'm really stiff in my shoulders just naturally. The pain used to be so bad that I would just close my eyes and grimace like that. So I did this squat dislo on high bar, and then my finger came out the finger hole. So I had to drop off in the middle of the competition in the routine. Sergey goes ballistic at me. So from that moment on, I used to tie like an elastic band to where it connects on the finger hole and then pull it to the back of the buckle so it would never come off. Quite a lot of gymnasts, you could see it. If you watch on TV, you'll see quite a lot of gymnasts do that. So it's quite clever because it means that way it will never come out of the fingers because it will be pulled back. And then around a similar time, I'd competed at a competition called the Stella Zaharova Cup in Ukraine, in Kiev. Went to this competition. There was loads of amazing gymnasts there. It was a brilliant event, and there was a Russian team. It was one of the first times I'd ever competed against a Russian team, and there was a guy there, and he had been the junior European all-around champion in 2006. So by this point, Sergey's told me about all these big competitions. This guy goes and he wins, and Sergey's gone up to him and told him, "Oh, this is my gymnast. This is Sam." He's like, he loves Russian gymnastics. His favorite gymnast is Alexei Nemov, and this guy comes up to me, and I was only about 13 or 14 at this time, and he gives me his handguards and he says, "These are the handguards I won the Junior European Championships in." I'm like, can't believe it. Like, really, Sergey? And he gives me these handguards, and they're like massive. They've got these massive thick dowels, and like the dowels are the part that, so you have a piece of leather, you got the strap and you got the finger holes, then underneath the strap here sits like it's like a piece of rubber. It's like a thin piece of rubber, probably like the width of your finger, fits under here, and that helps you grip onto the bar. Because it's really hard. You wouldn't be able to just hang onto a high bar and swing around and do these releases. You know, I've seen a few people try it and do it, but it just wouldn't be sustainable. So you need that dowel because it helps you grip on. And he had the massive dowel on these guards. So I took them back, and I was tiny. I was like 13, 14, so I was dead short, small hands, small wrists. Tried these on, tried to swing in them, and there was just no way I could swing in them. The leather was like this thick, proper Russian guards that had been made by hand. So in Russia, a lot of the athletes, their coaches make their handguards from scratch from a piece of leather, which I just thought was the coolest thing ever. So listening to Sergey talk about this, and then Sergey told me, "Sam, I could make you the guards if you want. Like, I know how to do it." And I was like, "What? Like, this is amazing." So I said, yeah, please, can you make me a pair of handguards? And so for a little bit of time, I tried to use these guys' guards, but it didn't work, and I carried on with my buckles. And then there came a period of time where I was like, "Look, Sergey, can you make me a pair, like, to fit my hands?" And he was like, yeah, I'll do that. So Sergey would source the leather from Russia when he went home every Christmas, and he'd get like maybe 10, 15 sets of leather, and it comes kind of like in the shape of a handguard, but not cut out yet. And then he'd measure it up to my hands, like he knew what he was doing, and he'd cut the right shape out for me, and he'd make it to the right size. And it was the coolest thing ever. So I can remember being so excited to be able to wear these guards, because no one I knew wore them. Like, everyone in England, you didn't have access to somebody that could make your own handguards, so you'd just wear like the ones you'd buy from a gymnastics company or that would come from Germany. A lot of the handguard companies are German, so this was like the coolest thing ever. But when you got this piece of leather, it was literally like the hide of a cow, so it'd still have the animal like fat on it and the skin. and it's the process to like get it ready was such a long process. It would take about a month. It'd take us about a month to get a pair of guards ready, which is obviously problematic when you're in a sport where the guards could rip at any moment in time, and it takes so much like manpower and so much of Sergei's time to actually make the guards. It was always just, I look back now and I kind of wish I'd never started. I'd just stuck with the factory-made handguards because it was easy. You just buy them, you wear them, you can wear them in within like 10 minutes and they're ready to go. And then it's the same size, same shape, never changes. But I did like the romance and the beauty of somebody designing the handguards and it being a tradition that's been passed on through time. That was cool for me. It was almost like in those guards, it was like the people that came before me, like my grandparents. It was like that tradition that got passed on, and I was carrying that on by wearing these guards. So I did like that. It was really cool. But it would take a long time. And in the early days, what they would do is they would soak them in petrol, because the petrol would pull the animal fat out and dry them out. Obviously now you can't just leave a bucket of petrol in a gymnastics club with a load of kids running around, but we used to back in the day. But you couldn't do that, so we'd sandpaper them and try and get them off, and then cover them in chalk and leave them in chalk to try and dry them out. But it was a very long process, and over the years and over the time, like Sergei managed to, he'd have my hand like locked down. He'd have like it traced out on paper. He'd know exactly the shape of my hand, and we'd change around with it. But it got increasingly harder towards the end of my career to source good leather. I don't know why that is. That's obviously coming from the source point, which was in Russia. I think it was getting more expensive to get the leather. It was getting harder to get it. It was harder to come by. Sergei wasn't going back home as much, so he'd have to get it sent over, or one of his friends would bring it to a competition, a different coach. So it was becoming more difficult, and we were running out of leather as well towards the end of my career. I think the last pair of handguards that I wore, I think he only had about 2 or 3 pieces of raw leather left. So, and he'd probably made me, God, I don't know, maybe Sergei made me 50, 60 pairs of high bar guards, which is incredible. Like, and honestly, when I say the man hours, we're talking weeks and weeks it would take to like get them ready and like make them. And you'd often see in the gym, you'd see people would come in and they'd look and they'd see Sergei swinging around the bar doing giants. People were like, what's he doing? Like, and he wasn't doing it as like an ego thing. He was doing it to try and get them ready and get them prepared. And I'm sure other gymnasts and coaches will have seen him do that for me in the past, like wear my handguards himself to try and get them ready, which is just dead cool. You got this guy that's like 60 swinging around the bar doing giants just to get them ready for nothing else. So I'm super buzzing that I wore those for the rest of my career. And, for me as well, there was a technical element to it. I found it really difficult when I was younger to do the inverted skills, which is where you're on the high bar and you turn your wrists inside out like that. I have really stiff shoulders and bad shoulders. I've literally just been to the hospital yesterday about my shoulders, and received some pretty like disappointing news about the state my shoulder's in, my right shoulder. And so I just really struggled doing those skills. And when you wore those big bulky handguards, the ones with the Velcro straps or the buckles, there was so much going on here that when I tried to catch the bar like that, my hands would slide really far apart, because I didn't have the flexibility in my wrists or my shoulders to catch closely. So when I wore these Russian guards, because it was just a V strap like this, it would almost be like doing it in bare hands. So I could roll my wrists a lot easier and my fingers on the high bar. So it just made it easier for me to do those skills. Now, what happened was the rules in gymnastics changed after 2012, and you no longer really needed to do those skills because they were heavily deductible. So at that point, I carried on wearing the Russian guards, but it became less of like a technical reason I was using them, and it was more just because that's what I knew, and I didn't know how to change, and they felt right for me. I think a couple of times in my life I tried to just dabble in wearing a different pair of guards, and they just felt horrible. And also I always felt guilty as well. Like I was like, Sergei's put all this time and effort over the years to make me handguards. If I go back to wearing the other guards now, it's pretty disrespectful to all the work that he's done. I didn't want him to be upset. So yeah, I wore those Russian guards for the rest of my career. And then I think on rings was a bit different. I never tried Russian guards on rings. I just used kind of the normal guards that were factory made, and I changed throughout my career. I think I used those Reichsport ones. Then I used a pair of like American ones for the Olympics. So in London, if you see my rings routine, I think they were called US Glove ring guards that I used. And then towards the end of my career, I used Shul Sport ones, which is a very same name, but different company. And they're the ones with the green Velcro on them. I loved those ones. I still went through them pretty quick, but you could buy ones that had like an extra thick leather. Those ones were great. I think I used to wear like a size 2 towards the end of my career. I used to be able to get really good grip with them, but they would wear out quite quickly. I'd be interested to know actually and have a chat with gymnasts now, like what handguards are they using and what's the quality of the leather like. So yeah, if there's anyone listening to this, tell me what your favourite handguards are and what the quality of the leather is like and whether it's changed, whether it's got worse or maybe it's improved and got better. I know that company, Reichel Sport, initially when I started using them, they did change their leather because he started in a small factory. They were all handmade. Then all of a sudden, he got pretty big and then he started making them with machines and I think the leather changed like a little bit. But they were still my favourite towards the end of my career. I used to wear those green ones. If you look at any of the YouTube videos, the old ones that we did in the gym, I'd be wearing those handguards. So that was kind of like the handguards, I think. And then I guess the next thing that I actually got into when I was younger was I loved gym shoes. Not a lot of people wear gym shoes anymore, but I used to watch a lot of Japanese gymnastics when I was younger, and they used to wear Mizuno gym shoes, which I just thought was like the coolest thing ever. So the amount of times, as soon as the internet became a thing in like kind of 2006 for like my generation, I'd just scour the internet trying to find websites that sold Mizuno gym shoes, but I could just never find them. I'd even go on like the Japanese websites, even though I couldn't read or write in Japanese, and try and work out what something meant to get to whether they had gym shoes or not. I never found them. And Sergey used to tell me that when he was a kid and when he was a gymnast, they used to have something called Tiger gym shoes. Now, I never worked out whether they were Mizuno or they were Onitsuka Tiger, the company that make trainers, the Japanese company, whether it was them that made gym shoes, I don't know, but he used to tell me about them and just say they were so cool, like everybody wanted a pair of them. And I think in his gym in Russia, his gym was very famous. His gym was called Vladimir, and they had 2 Olympic all-around champions from that gym, which is amazing, and world champions. And I think when they'd go away to Japan to compete, because they go a lot to Japan to compete, when they come back, they bring these gym shoes back. And so Sergey had this fascination with these Tiger gym shoes. And I think that's where that probably started with me. So the gym shoes we used to get back in the UK, we used to get either Venturelli gym shoes, which I don't know that they make them anymore, but I know that the gym at Notts are having a load of work done and there's an old kit room, and I found a brand new pair, but they were tiny. They were like a kid's pair, and I couldn't believe it. It was like it was like a time capsule or something, but it was a brand new pair that weren't sold like 20 years ago at the gym, that were just there. And then IWA, they made gym shoes as well. And I can remember on my birthday, it was like I think it was maybe my 11th or 12th birthday, I'd got this brand new pair of gym shoes. And I'm absolutely buzzing because I'm like, wow, these are nice. And they were quite expensive back then. I'm sure they'd be a lot more expensive now. And they were like plain white with like a red stripe, a red and gold stripe that kind of ran under the gym shoe in like a U shape. So I get these gym shoes. And these ones that I ordered were like leather ones. I don't know why on earth I thought it would be a good idea to do floor in leather shoes, because it's just going to make you heavier and your feet heavier. But I was like, I'm going to get these leather ones, and they're like pure white leather, a bit like football, but it might have been the football thing, a bit like wearing football boots. And I worked out that if you put one leather shoe inside the other leather shoe, and threw them at an angle, it was like a boomerang. So I'm like throwing these leather shoes across the gym from one side to the other. I've just got them for my birthday. And then I think it was one of my teammates, like probably Reese, stood at the other end of the gym. I was like, watch this. Thrown this gym shoe. It's just like caught whatever wind exists in a gymnastics gym, gone right up to the roof, and it's just slotted on the top of the roof, and you can still see it now. And that happened like when I was about 11 years old, so we're probably talking 2005, and there's just a gym shoe sat on the girder and the roof of the gym. It's brand new, and so if there's any way that we could ever get it down, maybe we need like a drone to go up and like take it down. That gym shoe is still there. It's pretty cool. When you go into Notts gym, you can see it on the girder in the middle of the roof of the gym. So it's pretty cool. But my mum and dad were so angry when I told them that I'd lost this gym shoe, and I was like, why did I tell them? I should have just kept it quiet. But yeah, so after that, I didn't wear any gym shoes for a while until I then bought another pair. But I wore those IWA ones for a lot of my career, probably up until the age of about 18, 19, I wore gym shoes. And then after that, I kind of switched. I kind of liked being in bare feet to do floor after that. I think it's nicer for the line. So when you see the line in the air, and one thing that a lot of gymnasts do, and it's one thing that I did, I used to wear white wristbands on my heels. I think it looks really cool when you see somebody doing a floor and they're twisting. It looks really cool visually and aesthetically to see whether they've got like white wristbands on their feet or ankle tape. It just looks really nice in the air. You can like, as a judge as well, it's really helpful because you can follow how many twists they do when there's like, rather than them just being barefoot and the whole legs is just kind of like their skin tone. When they've got like a white bit on the bottom, it looks really cool. It's almost like a propeller or something. So for the rest of my career, I kind of wore that. And I think the other things I probably wore on my legs and the other equipment I used in my career were probably a lot of supports. So when I was a kid, the floors weren't as good as they are now. They were really rock solid. And then the generation before me, they were even harder. But they didn't have these springs and the foam that they have now, which means they're a lot more forgiving now. You can do a lot more repetitions. So most of my generation had Osgood slatters in our knees, which is like growth pains. So we all had big lumps in our knees. So a lot of us we'd try anything. We'd wear tubey grips that like your grandmas would wear. We'd get like, you could get knee supports from like Boots, just the solid white knee supports, and you'd put them on just as a bit of compression. To be honest, I don't really know that they did anything. I think more than anything, it was just a placebo. It just felt like a bit of comfort and a bit of support on your knee. Some people used to put a thin piece of tape right round the knee where the Osgood slatters was, and that would kind of relieve the pain a little bit. But I mean, mine was so bad when I was younger that when I was at school, I'd like sit down on like those stools that we sit down on the podcast, basically, when we're doing a guest episode, and your feet kind of like dangle down. And when it would be like the bell would go and it would be time to change to a different lesson or go to break time, my knees would be so bad it'd take me 10 minutes to just get my knees stretched out so I could even walk again. That's how bad the growing pains were back then. And it's interesting that now, because the equipment's changed so much, I don't really see that a lot in younger gymnasts. I'm sure there's a few that have that, but for me in my generation, everybody had it. So that's been a massive positive in like an equipment change. But yeah, so we'd wear like lots of different supports. And then the one big thing that I probably wore on my lower body, like throughout the rest of my career, was like an ankle support sometimes. So I remember that there were these ankle supports around 2012 that Dan Keaton's wore, I think Sam Hunter wore, Ruslan wore, and they were like these almost like leather boots you would put on that was missing like the toe part, and you'd lace them up like a pair of, they're almost like boxing shoes, maybe? The same thing, but without like a toe part. Maybe what you'd wear for like kickboxing or Muay Thai, something like that. And they were cool, and you would lace them up and tie them like a pair of trainers. And they were really good for support. And I had one when I came back from my injury that had a metal rod going down each side. And that was great because it meant that I could start taking a few more risks on my ankle, but it was kind of held rigid like this and it wouldn't go side to side. And I'd wear that on my ankle for kind of the first 2 months coming back from my ankle surgery. But that laced boot was great. It was really helpful. Again, how much it did, I'm not too sure. I think it acted as almost like a hinge on like your ankle joint. So it kind of just stopped you moving. It was a bit of compression. I wore tape a bit towards the end of my career. The tape that I wore, if you go and watch me towards the end of my career, and the tape that I'm wearing on it must not have been doing anything. It must have been properly like a placebo. Every now and then I get taped up by the physios. They'd use like zinc oxide tape, and that'd be quite rigid. But that was pretty much everything that I would wear on my lower legs like throughout my career. And yeah, when I was a kid, I loved the gym. I never came across those Mizuno gym shoes. So I think I came across one pair once. I was in Japan at the World Championships. I said, Max, let's go outside and check if there's a Mizuno like store where they're selling gymnastics equipment. We went out and there was a tiny pair. It was like a size 4. They had like a green Mizuno thing on it. I was like, oh, you're joking. That's the only pair I ever came across. I always wanted to try and like swap it with the Japanese guys, but I think they brought a rule at the Japanese Federation, brought a rule in. Because basically every country would go to a competition and they just want to swap their kit with the Japanese. And the Japanese were swapping so much kit that the Federation made a rule to say that they can't swap their kit anymore, which is dead sad. But yeah, so I never came across those gym shoes, but that's kind of what I wore on my lower body. And then my upper body, I guess, the first thing I probably wore outside of my handguards was wrist supports. So around 2008, I was preparing for the Junior European Championships, and I was doing a skill called a Thomas rollout. So I was doing a straight somersault with a half twist, and I was rolling out. And I started picking up some wrist injuries with it. Now, prior to this, when we had a sore wrist, what we would do is we'd go to the old Handguards, so the Velcro ones, and we would like cut the strap off an old pair, and we just wrap it around our wrist. We just use anything we could, and they weren't very comfortable, those things, and they were pretty big, and they'd sit around your wrist like this, and they'd move quite a lot. Or you'd put a bit of tape around your wrist. But I found that in Germany they were selling these big, thick wrist supports, and like I used to have such bad wrist pain, like sometimes at this point, that when I put these on, the whole thing went away. They're amazing for taking away the pain of doing like pommel horse and doing lots of repetitions, and also like floor and impact work if you've got wrist pain. And what they are is they've got a strap on them. They've got a big thick piece of leather like this, and it kind of sits like this over your hand, and it stops your range of movement, so you can only get to about that point. And it acts again like a bit of a hinge, and it just took all the pain away in my wrist straight away. And so initially I found a pair of these in Germany when I was going out there to compete, wore them, and then after that, because I was having a lot of growing pains, and I went to that European Championships, and the reason that I started using these supports was because I broke my wrist. I fractured my wrist doing that skill. And then because I was coming back from an injury, and I didn't rehab properly at that age at 15, I just waited until there was no pain and just started training. I wore these wrist supports then from that moment on. And I think what happened was that my wrist became really weak. And rather than using it as a short-term fix, that just became a long-term solution. And actually after that, I struggled to do anything on my wrists without my wrist supports again from the age of 15 up until the age of about 25. And then at 25, I had kind of started to think a bit more about just gymnastics and my body in general, and I had kind of worked out maybe my wrists are getting quite weak from doing this. So I decided I was going to try and stop using the wrist supports, which was really hard to do after 10 years of wearing them. And I struggled because my wrists were so much weaker when I started. But I started with doing like the mushroom basics on pommel without wrist supports. I started doing floor stuff, so I started tumbling without wrist supports, and then slowly but surely towards the end of my career, I would do my flares on floor, which is probably the hardest place to do like for your wrists if you do have issues with your wrists, because the floor's flat and you're completely at a 90-degree angle like that, and if you don't have the range, it's pretty painful. But I would do all my flares without my wrist supports. So that would actually be one piece of advice that I would give people, is that if you choose to use big wrist supports, if you've got an injury and you've got no choice, like use them, but also try and use them as like a short-term fix, or have a pair of wrist supports in your gym bag, but use them when you've got pain. But if the pain goes away, then go back. Don't use them like I did as a long-term fix over 10 years, 15 years, because then your wrists just get really weak. So yeah, and the great thing was when I first found these wrist supports, it was a company in Germany that made them, and they made them in a green or a red colour, which were just not very, aesthetically, they were not the nicest colours. A lot of the time in gymnastics, your kit is going to be white, maybe blue, maybe red. And towards the end of my career, because I always still needed to wear these wrist supports for pommels, I just, I tried a few times to see if I could swing pommel without wrist supports, but I just done it for so long, it just wasn't going to be a good idea at the age that I was at that point. And I'd had a lot of wrist injuries, so if you look at my wrist here, you can still see that sticking out. That's from when I fractured it when I was a kid. So I do have big, thick wrists. So I've obviously got a lot of calcification that's built up over the years there. But I found that Turn made these white ones, and it was exactly the same product. It was the same thing. They're actually a bit nicer because they were slimmer. So the piece of leather that sticked over the top wasn't quite as wide. And with the green ones and the red ones, the buckle seemed to dig into my hand quite a lot. Whereas with these Turn ones, it didn't seem to do that. So I really liked them towards the end of my career. And because they were white, it was just looked so much nicer when I was competing. I think towards the end of my career with knots, and particularly with the leotards that I went on to wear that were Turn leotards as well, I wore white a lot of the time. So it looked so much nicer aesthetically. And gymnastics, look, at the end of the day, it's a sport where aesthetics matter. You're being judged, and it does make a big difference. There's a reason you can't wear black longs and black socks in a competition. And so for me, I really enjoyed wearing those white ones towards the end of my career. So yeah, unfortunately, I was never able to get to the point where I could do all my gymnastics with wrist supports. That was like a dream that I started too late. But if I could go back, that is one thing I probably would have done. I would have used the wrist supports in the situations where I had a wrist injury or I was struggling, or doing, maybe if I had to do sets of 1,000 circles, which I used to have to do quite regularly, I'd wear the wrist supports. But then when I did my routines and my skills, I wouldn't wear them. And that way my wrists weren't getting weaker. So seeing it as like an injury that you recover from, rather than, all right, now I'm just going to wear these forever. I guess the other things that I kind of like wore on my upper body and I used, the big thing was tape. I was notorious for stealing tape. When I say stealing, it was like from physios that had that in their kit bags anyway, and I guess they were being paid by British Gymnastics, and so I just always used to be after tape, because I would use tape on my wrists, like zinc oxide tape. I was dead particular about it. A lot of people use electrical tape, but for me, like, electrical tape would just slide and slip, and your handguards would like move. So I'd use the zinc oxide tape, and like my favorite was like the white stuff, again, just for aesthetics, because the brown stuff kind of stuck out a little bit. So I'd try and find white zinc oxide tape, but that got so much more, I guess, inflation over the years. But like when I was a kid, you could buy a roll of that for £2. Like now it's like a tenner for a roll, which is just ridiculous. And I refused to pay that. So I would ask the physio. I was always had good relationships with all the physios, because I liked all the physios, and we would quite often we'd talk about football, because a lot of them have a footballing background, so we could relate on that. But also I kept friends with them, so they would always give me tape. So the physios would always I'd be like, Johnny, can I have a roll of tape? Or Nathan, can I have a roll of tape? Ali, can I get a roll of tape? And they would always go, all right, mate, and they'll give me a roll of tape. So I was notorious for nicking tape all of the time, just because I used it so much. I used it like every day. I'd go for a roll like every few weeks. But yeah, and the quality of the tape is hard as well, you know, like sometimes you buy it online or you'd buy it in a shop and it'd be like paper thin, and that stuff just breaks or slides really quickly. And when you're doing like high bar or rings, your hands get so sweaty, man, because you're training hard, and they're like tight like this, and if you're nervous, you're going to sweat more. So you've got to make sure that it can really stick and it's not going to slide and adjust, because it makes a huge difference when you're competing. You want to feel completely comfortable, and you want your handguards to be locked in like this. So yeah, tape was a big one. I'm trying to remember the companies that used to make them. Like normally I would just type in zinc oxide online and I would find it, but I used to have to go through loads of different ones to find one that like really worked. But the best tape you'd ever get would always be the ones that the physios had. So I'd always go for the physios tape if I could. And if we were at a training camp and no one was looking, I'd be like, oh, there's a roll of tape there, I need that. And so I'd take a roll of tape. So if any of them are listening, I do apologise, but yeah, it was for the greater good of the squad, I'm sure. And then I guess the other thing you use on your upper body is chalk, right? Chalk's huge. When I was a kid, you used to pay £1 a block for a chalk. So at my gym, they just have like a locker that was locked up in knots, and they'd order like a box of 100 blocks of chalk. You pay like £1 and you get a block, and you use that block. That's your block. And then after a while, I think as you get kind of into the senior team, the blocks would just get taken out. It would be included in like your fees that you would pay each month for training. So when I was at Knots, I'd use block chalk the whole time. But I would always struggle on P-bars with the grip. So the grip on P-bars, and I actually got asked this recently because I think a video went slightly viral online, because Connie's workmate asked her, do gymnasts really use syrup on the P-bars? And she was like, oh yeah, I think Sam used to use syrup on the P-bars. And she was like, what? And it's true. Like, we all use different things, because the P-bars, the high bar is a circle and it's quite small, so you can fit your whole hand around it. So you can get your whole hand around the high bar, so it's easy to grip onto. But the P-bars is like an oval shape, and you can't fit your whole hand on it like this. So it's really hard to hang on to that, because your thumb doesn't fit round. Your thumb has to kind of slide up as you go underneath. And it's really tough. And if you've not got big hands or really strong grip, some people find it just naturally really difficult. And when I was a kid, I found it so hard to hang on to the P-bars. And I tried everything. I tried sugar water. We had a period at Knots where if you were around the P-bars, there'd just be these weird, like, old jars of, like, a sugary liquid just everywhere, like 20 of them, because we had this like trend of going home and seeing how much sugar we could cram into hot water and how thick we could get our sugar water, because hopefully that would make us hang on to the P-bars. It never really worked for me until I went to a training camp in Italy, in Turin. And there was these little sachets of honey that you like would get at breakfast, and I noticed that one of the Italian kids was putting chalk into it, and so I tried to use it one day, and it was like the stickiest stuff ever. And I'd realised that when you put the chalk into the honey and mix it up, it makes it thicker. So I started trying that when I came back, but it still wasn't quite right. It wasn't the same as it was in Italy. And then when I moved to Huntingdon, in Huntingdon, they didn't use block chalk. So you've got two options. You can use blocks of chalk or powder chalk. They used powder. I was a bit unsure about it at first, but as soon as I used this powder chalk, all of a sudden I could just hold on to the P-bars. And I went from struggling to be able to do one long swing on P-bars and worrying about my grip and having to have Sergey hold my hand all the time to be able to do sets of like 5 long swings on P-bars. It was unbelievable, literally overnight. And it was just a chalk, and that grip just worked for me. Now, they had a sponsorship at the time for Lyle's Golden Syrup as well. So they had a box of about 100 bottles of Lyle's Golden Syrup, and you could just go in and use one. And so I'd take the Lyle's Golden Syrup and I'd put chalk in it and mix it up and leave it overnight and put it in the fridge to make it colder, because if you make it colder, it makes it thicker. And then I'd bring it in and I'd use it on the P-bars. And all after that, I had great grip throughout the rest of my career, and I did decent skills in the underbar on parallel bars after that. So I always used powder chalk, and I was never able to go back to block chalk. I could never do it. For me, using block chalk was like talcum powder. I couldn't understand how other people were using it. And the worst thing to happen was mixing the two. So if I was going on the high bar with a block chalk and someone with the powder chalk, and someone else, another gymnast, was coming with a block chalk, they'd just like cancel each other out. Like two magnets, it just cancel it out and there'd be no chalk left on the bar. It was an absolute nightmare. But yeah, using the powder chalk for me was massive. So again, I used to nick it. So they used to have big bags of powder chalk at Lilleshall in a locker at the back corner, and I'd get there to the training camps early because Sergey would always want to leave super early. So I'd go in with my bag, I'd fill it up because I knew the code to the locker, to the padlock, and I'd fill it up with chalk, and I'd sit back down and wait for everyone else to get here. And then on the last day of the training camp, Sergey would always want to leave last because I'd be training last. And just before we'd go, Sam would say, go on, get some, Sergey would say, go and get some chalk. So I'd go back into the gym, open the locker, get more chalk, and then go back home. And I did that. I managed to pull that off for years, like 4 or 5 years. And then in the end, I managed to convince everybody at Loughborough University that were the university students that trained at the gym that powder chalk was better and that we should buy powder chalk for the gym. So in the end, instead of them buying block chalk, they bought powder chalk. So wherever I went, I remember reading that, I think it was Patrick Kluivert, when he moved to a club, and he managed to get them to change the colours because he didn't like the colours on the kit. So he managed to influence all the people around him at the club to change the colour of the kit. And I can remember reading that and being like, God, that's so much like me. Because when I moved back to Nottingham in 2016, they used block chalk. And I just, very quickly, I was like, right, I need to convince everyone here that we're going to use powder chalk from now on. So after that moment, they just got powder chalk. They still use powder chalk now. And then the same thing, we changed the colours of the kit. Because at the time when I went back to Notts, they had like baby blue on top and like black shorts and white longs. And I was like, let's switch this around. So then we went to black leotards and then blue shorts. And I think they're changing the kit again now and trying to go back traditional to the old Notts colours. But yeah, chalk is a huge thing, man. It makes a big difference. The Japanese chalk always used to seem incredibly fine. It was like, that stuff was like gold dust. I think Dan Keatings once asked the Japanese if they could give him some chalk. I think there was a time where Dan Keatings used to take a big box of chalk to all his competitions and stuff. Dan was someone that took his grip like really, really seriously. I can remember I used to train with a guy called Yevgeny. And I can remember one day him like explaining to me the science of doing the grip on P-bars because he was so good at it and he used to do it so different to everybody else. I just was like watching him and he was talking like in all these, talking about the P-bars having like feelings and stuff. It was so weird, but like that's how serious people would take like getting their grip right, because everybody will have a different grip. So when you see them on TV, the gymnasts compete at the Olympic Games in Paris, have a look, see what they're using, whether they're using syrup, honey, sugar water. Some people use salt water. They use cloths to wipe the P-bars with water and start from scratch. And it's one of the most stressful things in gymnastics, especially in a team competition, is if a team that's gone up before you have a completely different grip. When you go up, you've only got 50 seconds to get it right, and it's really stressful. The Chinese normally jump on and they just take everything off the bars with a water cloth, which is really stressful. If you were in a competition with the Chinese, you'd be like, oh, I hope we're competing before they do, because they're going to completely ruin our grip. So that's one thing that people at home that are watching on TV might not know, but this time, for the Olympic Games, you'll be able to see, are they using block chalk or powder chalk? They're using syrup or honey? So it's quite a cool thing to know about gymnastics. But yeah, that's what it is. It's purely for the grip and helping them stay on the P-bars. And I guess the other thing is probably leotards, right? So I remember my first ever leotard that I wore. I don't think I was particularly happy about wearing it, to be honest. I was from a family of footballers and stuff. And to be fair, the first leotard that I wore was my Knots one, which is quite a famous leotard now. It was a velour leotard, which I don't know if they even make them. It's like a velvety thing. It's like a velvet red with like blue trims on the arms and blue shorts, like proper royal blue. And it was made by a company called Zone. I think Zone are still going. I used to really like the Zone kit. I used to like their longs. Their longs were really like straight. So they were great because like longs can make the biggest difference. I'd say in all the kit that you're going to wear in terms of like the leotard, the shorts and the longs make the biggest difference, because the longs, if they're too baggy and they're too big and they're kind of not made to measure, they act as like a parachute. And it feels really weird when you're doing gymnastics in longs if you're used to just training in shorts. When I was a kid at my gym in Knots, we were like one of the only gyms in the country where everybody would just wear football shorts and football kits. We were almost like the bad kids of like the gymnastics world, because we would go to training camps and just wear big long shorts at the age of like 8 or 9 years old. And a lot of the other clubs, they would make them wear leotards and shorts until they were like 16. So we'd just wear like these big baggy clothes and football kits because we were all big football fans. We'd wear them. I think that came from our head coach at the time. He was massively into football. So yeah, we'd just wear that. And I always adopted the approach, like, it doesn't matter what you're wearing if you can perform well, right? Why does it matter? Like, if you're wearing long baggy shorts or even basketball shorts or longs, the only thing that's important is if you can do your routine well or not. So that was kind of like what I adopted. But I can remember when I moved to Huntingdon and I'd wore these big baggy shorts and football shorts, and they all used to wear tiny gym shorts. What's going on here? But it's funny how the environment you're in molds you. And I think by the time that like I left Huntingdon, I was wearing gym shorts as well. And then I went back to normal shorts by the time I got back to Knots. But the leotard that I wore was like velour leotard. Again, went into that kit room and they still had that leotard. I'm sure I've got one somewhere. And that was my first kind of leotard that I ever wore. But the first GB leotard that I ever wore, and I've still got this leotard, and I saw that Lewis actually put a picture up of it. A picture of him having won a competition in that leotard. Must have been back in like 2004 or 2005. That's the leotard I've got, and it's actually awesome. It was a Milano leotard, and the GB flag was like embroidered onto it. It's really cool. It's like a dark... Milano used to have this dark blue that was kind of like unique to the GB team. I used to love that blue. And that leotard was great, man. That was my first ever leotard. I wore that at the Future Cup in Austria when I was 12 years old. Won that competition. So I'm going to keep that leotard because it's really cool, man. I'll probably try and get it, put in a frame or something one day. But yeah, and then throughout the majority of my career for GB, we'd always wear Milano leotards. I remember one time I worked with Milano on designing a leotard that replicated the Sydney 2000 Alexei Nemov leotard. So I wore that at the British. That was one of the coolest leotards I probably wore in my career. Probably the coolest Milano leotard I wore. And then towards the end of my career, the GB setup, they changed. They dropped Milano and then they went to Quattro. Personally, I didn't like those leotards as much. I didn't like the fit. They were a lot tighter, like on your legs. So your muscles just tended to stick out a little bit. I used to get stuck a bit on like my shears on pommel horse. That was always a nightmare on pommel horse if your kit got stuck to the lever, so you couldn't slide when you were doing the shear work. So I didn't like those kits as much as I did the other ones, the ones that I wore previously. And I guess it's probably important to talk about the leotard that I wore at the Olympic Games, right? So the leotard we wore at the Olympic Games, I believe it was actually made by like GK, which was like an American brand, but it had Adidas on it, but it wasn't made by Adidas. It was like made by GK with Adidas branding on it. But those designs were really cool. I loved them. We had a red one, like a kind of royal blue one and then like a baby blue one. I really like the baby blue one. We never wore that in competition. We wore that in like the podium session. That was probably my favourite one, actually. Obviously, the red one that we've got, the one that we wore in the competition, I've got that signed by the whole team, which is really cool. It's probably one of the coolest things that I've got, I think, like gymnastics memorabilia-wise. I'm definitely getting that in a frame at some point, but yeah, it's signed by the whole team. That was the leotard that I wore. I've still got the number that I wore. When you compete in a gymnastics competition, everybody gets given a number that gets literally paperclip to your back. So that's like one of the most stressful things you have to do just before a competition. You see everybody racing around. There's like 2 minutes to walking out, and you see everybody bent over like this with their coach trying to paperclip this number onto their back without stabbing them in the back with a paperclip. So that's what those numbers are. And sometimes they like fall off and stuff. But while you're competing, you don't really notice them as long as they're quite tight. If they're flopping around, it is quite annoying. But it's interesting in gymnastics how you notice those things. Like, when I would train in the gym, you know, it'd make a real big difference. And this sounds crazy, but you're so in tune with your body. And you think about it, right? You're lifting your body up and doing movement all of the time. So you're so aware when something changes. And like, it would be a big difference to me doing circles on pommel horse with socks on or with socks off, which sounds ludicrous to anybody else. But if you're lifting your body up and you're doing somersaults in the air, you can just feel those subtle changes make a huge difference. Even training in a t-shirt or training with a t-shirt off, training in big shorts or long shorts or training in a leotard. Like, one thing I used to do, like, a couple of weeks before the competition, and I used to hate doing it because it was so annoying and I hated wearing it, is that for those last 2 weeks, I would make sure I wore a leotard and the full kit in a practice competition in the training gym, because it just feels different. You can't move as freely, and I think it's really important to practice those little details. I also think you can take that to the extreme, and to be fair, towards the end of my career, I started going, I've wore a leotard for 21 years. I think I know what it feels like. That it really isn't going to make that much of a difference. So there's probably a balance to strike there, but it does make a real difference. What you're wearing, your handguards make a huge difference. And the biggest thing and the most important thing is you've got to feel comfortable and you've got to feel safe. I think there was one time where I was on high bar. I was making my comeback after my ankle injury, and I was trying to do a casino on my high bar routine. And in the warm-up, the buckle on my Russian guard that Sergey had made snapped. And as I got to the bottom of the swing, and in my head, I'm just about to let go to do a casino over the bar, I pong off at the bottom. I did a double straight somersault and somehow landed on all fours like a cat with 9 lives. But that scared the life out of me. And that was the first time that I'd have a buckle snap while I was doing like a gymnastics routine. And after that, I was pretty nervous, man. I always checked the buckle after that, made sure it was okay. There was like a little sheet of metal that went around the buckle that allowed it to slide when you pull it in. And I noticed that often that opened up a little, it prized open a little bit. So I'd always check that and make sure I squeezed it back together. And those little things make a big difference. Imagine if you're competing at an Olympic Games, a moment that you've trained for 20 years, you're just about to do a amazing routine on the high bar to win an Olympic medal, and your handguard snaps or rips or the Velcro comes undone. That would be the worst feeling in the world. So the kit that you've got and the tools that you use for your trade are super important. And when I go back to that story, and that time when I left my gym bag, I mean, it was pretty harsh, Sergey's reaction initially. I actually remember my mom crying because she couldn't believe how angry he was with me, but he was trying to teach me a really important life lesson. My gym bag was everything. Without it, I couldn't compete and I couldn't do my profession. And I think I carried that with me probably into when I worked for my dad as a labourer, and I saw it with everybody that worked there. They looked after their tools and they cleaned their tools at the end of every day, because you have to, man. It's a bit like playing football, playing out in the mud and not cleaning your boots, or playing golf and not taking the mud or the sand or cleaning the grooves on the golf club. Like, those small things make a big difference. And more than anything, I think it's about respecting the equipment. It's just super important. And it's a bit like your car, right? If you don't look after your car, you don't get an MOT or a service every year, you don't check the oil levels, it's probably going to break down quicker. It's the same with equipment. So it's super important, especially when there's a lot on the line. If you're going up there to represent your country and you're putting your hand up to do a routine, the last thing you want is your handguard ripping or snapping if it could have been avoidable. So making sure that you've got the best tools that are right for you is super, super important. I miss those days, man. I miss the days of going, like, getting to the gym and opening up my gym bag and taking all the little attachments and everything that I had. God, man, when I used to have blisters and stuff on my hands, I used to put Vaseline and a little piece of plastic bag on it, and I just wouldn't be able to feel it after that. Then tape it over, and even if I got a blister, I could just train through with a blister. I wouldn't even be able to feel it. All these little tips and tricks that you'd pick up along the way are super cool. I like watching gymnasts on TV when they compete, or even watching them train and see all the little things and the nuances and how they tie their kit, whether they put their left handguard on and then the right one, or the right and the left, whether they do the same thing. Some people have like different, like separators you can get for drawers. Some people have that in their gym bag, which is super organized. My gym bag, when I was younger, used to be very much just lob everything in. As I got older and obviously my OCPD came out more, it was very much more rigid, and it'd be quite funny because I'd carry you probably remember from the YouTube videos, I carried my handguards in like a Sainsbury's bag and stuff, which I used to think was quite funny. But yeah. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. It's definitely one for the gymnasts, maybe one for the coaches too, and also the parents. So when you're thinking about the kit that you're getting, it is expensive. It's super expensive for parents now. So making sure that you get good quality is probably the advice that I would give. You do kind of have to shop around a little bit to find the ones that you like, but there are so many kids inside your group. Before you make that leap and make that jump to buy an expensive pair of handguards, ask the people in your group if you could try their handguards on first, see how they feel. I'm sure they'd say yeah. Someone might have an old pair or a spare pair that you can wear for a couple of sessions before you then make that commitment to buying a new pair of handguards. But for me, it makes a big difference. It's super important, but the most important thing is that you're comfortable. When you're going up there 2.8 meters in the air to swing around a high bar, you need to feel safe and trust the equipment that you're using. I used some amazing kit and amazing brands throughout my career. I still do. I think the Leotards that I wore towards the end of my career with Turn were my favourite. Those personal design Leotards they were awesome, man. Like the detail, the attention to detail, and I have to shout out Dave at Turn for that. Like we would talk and I'd say, look, I want to design one around like a Nottingham theme and like Nottingham Forest. And we literally took a very famous Forest kit that Stuart Pearce used to wear when he played at Forest and turned that into a leotard. And it looked so cool. And we got so much great feedback, not just from people and fans and people that followed us online, but from other gymnasts that were going, that kit is awesome. Like the one that we wore that was a Nottingham one at the Olympic trials in 2021 that had Robin Hood on it, and they're just some of the coolest kits, man. I think my personal favourite was the one that we wore I was preparing for a competition to compete in Athens. And there's a YouTube video about this. And that competition in Athens, right, was going to be in the Acropolis in Athens. They were going to use the ancient Greek kind of like stadium to do a gymnastics competition, and they were getting some of the best gymnasts from around the world to perform. And so I was designing a routine purely for this competition. I was like, Dave, let's design like a routine for this. So the guys at Turn put together this leotard, right? And it was based off the original London Olympics in the early 1900s. And it was based off the athletics running kit. And so if you go and type that in on YouTube, and those pictures are black and white, right? But it's based off the same kit, and it is just beautiful. It had braces on it, like they would wear in gymnastics back in the day. And that is probably like the most beautiful leotard that I ever wore in my career. It's just so classic. It's white. It's very like Wimbledon / the Soviet Union when they would just wear all white kit. It was just like, that was like artwork, that piece of kit. So that was probably my favorite leotard. And I think as well, like, just to finish, if I was going to go back to the start and I was going to use certain things in my career that I've spoke about today, handguards, I probably never would have gone down the Russian handguard route because it just caused me so much stress. It was so hard for me to, if a pair of my handguards ripped in the build-up to a competition, I couldn't just buy a pair and then wear them the next day. Sergey had to make them, and we had to work around the clock to try and get them ready. And we never really got that time down to anything less than really 2 weeks. And that was just a stress all the time. So the anxiety that caused me wasn't worth it. So I would have probably gone back to where I don't know whether I'd wore Velcro or buckle, but I probably towards the end of my career, I felt like the leather on the Reichel Sport one, so with the green strap, was better. So I probably would have tried them. There might be different pairs of handguards out now. I know Turn make handguards. I know Gymnastic Planet make their own handguards. So I think a lot of brands are now making their own, but I would have probably gone to the Reichel Sport ones just because I was using those on rings. I think I wouldn't wear gym shoes. I'd definitely probably wear wristbands because I used to, a lot of the time when you're on floor, you bash your ankle bones together. So wearing wristbands, you'll see a lot of gymnasts wear wristbands because it stops that. And aesthetically, I think it looked really nice. So I'd probably wear wristbands still. If I could, I would have taped them up with white tape. But again, you just need so much tape to do that. And it's so expensive now. The tape, I would still try and nick it off physios. Chalk, I would still do the same thing. I'd be like a bit of a wheeler dealer, just trying to get it where I could. But I'd be using powder chalk. I always used... I played around with it. I tried honey for a while, but Lyle's golden syrup, man. And the coolest thing about Lyle's golden syrup, right, is if you've got a tin of golden syrup in your cupboard, or you've got a bottle, go and look at it, and the emblem on it is a dead lion with flies flying around it. Which, like, it was one of them things when I was like, I was 30 years old when I realised that that's the emblem for Lyle's golden syrup, which is pretty dark and a bit weird, but it's super cool. So there's a lion on it, and it's got, like, dead flies flying around it. So I would use Lyle's golden syrup, and then Leotards-wise, I'd wear Turn Leotards. To be honest, I know that they worked with me, and I know that they do sponsor episodes of the podcast, but generally, they were just the most comfortable. They had these built-in, like, they've got, like, built-in shorts. Some people don't like that. Some people do. For me, like, they just used to dig in. Those V leotards just digged in, man. And it's quite funny. I remember I've spoke about it on the podcast at that Worlds in 2011. I would wear boxers, right, under my shorts. And I can remember getting told off for wearing boxers, and it was really unprofessional. And all the other countries, the younger gymnasts from the other countries look up to me as a role model. I'm going to set a bad example. And I was like, what? But now they make leotards with boxers built in. So for me, I would wear them. And yeah, I've really enjoyed this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. There are lots of places out there you can go to buy these products and buy this kit. Thank you for listening to the episode. If you have any questions, fire them at me. Just ask me. I'll get back to you about kit or different handguards, chalk, that kind of stuff. But more than anything, thank you for listening, and I will see you guys in the next episode.